Hello everyone, my name is Artem and I'm working as Director of Monetization Products at Xsolla, and it's very nice to meet you guys. So for the last 15 years I've been helping companies to build monetization strategies that actually work, and I was blessed to work with companies like Steam, Nexters, MiHoYo, PlayerX, Roblox, and probably 100 more that you probably know pretty well. Today I want to talk with you guys about one of the hottest topics on the market, web shops. And I think we should start by defining what web shop is. And from my perspective, web shop is an extension to your game. It's a significant part of your direct-to-consumer strategy. It can enhance games' live operation capabilities that will definitely lead to increase in lifetime value, retention, and engagement. What could we bring to the table by this thing? So, you can expect around 30 to 40% of players starting to shift from in-game to the web purchases experience. And revenue is increasing by 11 to 60% at its minimum. And how far you want to go, it's totally up to you. By implementing 5 rules that we are going to talk about today, you can achieve a conversion from visit to purchase up to 40%, and this is something on average that we see from the data, and more than a half of visitors making a repeated purchase within a month. So, at this point, it's no longer a question if your game needs a web shop or not. At this moment, it's a fact. The question is how you can get the most out of it. So, the most challenging aspect of building a web shop is actually that you need to shift an existing behavior paradigm. And to succeed, you need to create a new habit for your players. And that's not an easy task by any means. The new norm that you try to establish is game is where I play and web is where I pay. And any activity transforms into a habit if the brain considers activity as a beneficial one, if activity is relatively easy to perform, and if activity is repeated a sufficient number of times. The 5 rules of success that we are going to talk about, they are built around the idea of establishing a new habit. So because at the end of the day, this is what you need. You want to shift as many players as possible from the game to the web and make them love the new experience. So without being said, let me introduce you to 5 rules of success of your web shop. And these are results of more than 400 launched web shops for the last 3 years by Xsolla. So let me start with the rule number 1. Never stop communicating about your web shop. So remember, repeatability is one of the building blocks of a habit. So communication-wise, you will always have 2 never-ending activities. The first, to let players know about the existence of the web shop. The second, to reinforce communication. So there will be never a point in time when you can afford to stop doing either of those activities. So let's talk about each of them in more details. So, you can let your players know about your web shop existence like in 1,000 different ways, but one scenario definitely stands out. Whenever your game is already launched or just ready, getting ready to be launched, you can leverage what we call pre-registration framework. And basically, it's a landing page that you publish even before your web shop is launched, and you use this landing page to collect your players' contact information. Then, use this contact information, such as emails, phone numbers, whatever, to let your players know about web shop grand opening event. You can tell them that, say, first X players will get very beneficial rewards, and for the first week, everything will be discounted at like 50% or something like this. So I guess you got the point. So as a third step, run an opening promo campaign. You need to attract those players who kind of missed the pre-registration stage. And now, when your web shop is finally open, you can move to the second continuous activity. And this is reinforcing communication. Why? Because retention matters. So do not try to reinvent the wheel. Integrate communication about your web shop into your existing player engagement channels. Start with something that you already have and what's working. And of course, do not forget to move players from pre-registration stage to these existing channels. So if for some reason different segments of players react to different channels, I would always suggest starting with whales. Start with a channel that they trust, respect, and use. Then you can keep adding more and more additional segments to expand the reach. The good news that the incremental revenue that you will get from the web shop could open a lot of additional possibilities from user acquisition standpoint. And just think about it. If your competitor is already having a web shop, they have a better margin. And they will definitely use this margin to attract more valuable players. So to stay competitive, this is something to consider. But my biggest suggestion here is just try to utilize every single opportunity to remind players about the existence of the web shop. You should do that very often and always emphasize that this is something beneficial for them. And with that being said, we can move to the next one. And the next rule is friction is your biggest enemy. Want it or not, but shifting players from the app to the web comes along with added friction. And this is quite the opposite to what you want to help players build a new habit. So there are three areas of the highest friction. First of them is authentication. Second is payment detail input. And third, explicit value. This is a very crucial thing, so we're going to talk about each of them in details. And let's start with authentication. And it's quite obvious, you want to make it as easy as possible, but let's start with what you should not do. Do not hide your store behind the login. Well, of course, some personalized offers, players have to be logged in to see that. Show them anyway. Just prompt them to authenticate. But everything else should be available as soon as player enter the web shop, because they need to recognize the value. Please avoid edge gating if that is legally possible, two-factor authentication, and even login and password. 99% of the time is just unnecessary. But the best results we've seen so far are coming from what we call deep link and QR code authentication. And you can actually screen the example on the screen. So how does work? A player enters a web shop, he taps on login, he will be redirected to the game, some magic happens on the background, then he will be redirected back to the web shop, that's it. If your player base use web shop from bigger screen like PC or laptop, use QR code, the principle pretty much the same. Apple and Google authentication works pretty cool as well. Pretty much the same I can say about social medias. Basically everything that is one tap is totally fine. But do not make your players remember anything. It just works too bad. The next area of highest friction is payment detail input. And well, let's be honest, adding information to the new system is always a pain in the different areas of our body. So, and you cannot avoid this thing. So once a player made a purchase, make everything you can do to help them save payment information. It's a good practice to give big, like BIG bonuses, something valuable, bundle, battle pass, whatever it takes. Oh, and by the way, additionally, do not forget to sort payment methods according to the region. That is a big point of a churn, so pay attention to that as well. The third area of highest friction is how you show in the value. And when player enters the web shop, he should immediately, instantaneously, in the very first nanosecond, understand that a web shop is where value resides. So here are some basic rules almost everyone keep forgetting about. So do not hide information about what is included, like pricing, benefits, behind the design. Show everything explicitly. Always show the difference between pricing and stuff, like between the game and the web shop. Never make player calculate anything. They just won't do that. And of course, actively use badges, tags, and other things to manage players' attention. So bottom line is pretty simple. Make value obvious. And speaking about the value, rule number 3, value is the king of the web shop. So let's think on vocabulary. From a web shop perspective, value is a meaningful benefit that will outweigh the discomfort of purchasing on the web. So, and as you remember, to form a habit, an action should be cost-benefit positive from brain's perspective. And frankly speaking, added value is the only reasons for players to actually use a web shop. And that's exactly why value is the king of the web shops. So basically, you have 3 ways to create value for players. First is discounts, and this is straightforward. It is just price reduction. The second one is additional value, get more for the same price. And third is uniqueness, providing players with something they can't get in-game, or it should be extremely hard to obtain within a game. And I want to emphasize the importance of uniqueness. Your web shop should always, 100% of the time, contain something unique. For some players, it's far more valuable than added value or discounts. So for these reasons, always include something unique in special and personalized offers. Uniqueness is a trigger for spending. Moreover, you want to focus your marketing efforts on promoting these offers. And one more thing. We noticed that the most valuable players, the whales, they prefer uniqueness over everything else. Speaking about the whales, they always hunting for value, and webshop was created to provide additional value. So it's a perfect match. That's why I basically told you that you always want to start with whales. So this segment is actually willing to spend even more if you will provide enough incentives, of course. So therefore, try to always include something that costs more than $99 into your web shops. I've seen so many cases when something like 70% of all revenue coming from web shops was coming from these super expensive packages. And I'm talking about games that earn hundreds of millions of dollars from their web shops. So it's a big one. And try to utilize so-called variable reinforcement, which is basically a random, unexpected reward, pretty significant reward. And this is one of the most powerful techniques to form a habit because of the amount of dopamine being generated by this kind of thing. So here's an example. If you ever played Diablo series, and if you ever in your entire life destroyed a barrel and get a legendary item out of it, you will keep hitting those barrels probably like till the rest of your life. That's how it's powerful. Your brain wouldn't allow you to skip even one little barrel. So apply the same technique and make your players do exactly the same so that they can return to the web shop again and again and again. When deciding whether to use discounts or added value, I would always suggest go with added value. Because with discounts, you're basically giving away a portion of your revenue. But the biggest problem is that you're basically educating your players to purchase only when there is a discount. And yes, of course, there are some games which monetization is built around providing discounts. It's totally fine. But every other game should probably try to avoid or at least combine discounts with added value. And also, data suggests that whales, they actually prefer added value over discounts. So they spend more on such offers. It's obvious, but sometimes overlooked. The more expensive item or package is, the more value you should provide. So you should increase it according to the value. And I will suggest starting with 10% added value or discount and increase it according to price of the SKU. 5% or less is just not enough to move the needle. And frankly, I see cases when a pretty big company, one of the biggest company, decided to use exactly the same pricing, which doesn't make any sense. So never do that. That won't work. Okay, moving forward. The next rule of success is leverage webshop LiveOps power. And I want to start by saying something truly controversial. Well, you can start with what I call evergreen webshop. And for this one, you actually don't really need LiveOps. It's a very simple webshop that sells something like 6 packs of virtual currency, never changing stuff. And this type of webshop can actually bring like 10% increase in revenue without any investments in development, in maintenance, and that's pretty cool. But if you want to go beyond 10%, if you want 20, 30, 50, or even more of incremental revenue, you have to have LiveOps webshop strategy, and you have to take it pretty seriously. So good news is that webshop live operation capabilities are it's a very efficient thing, especially when it's properly combined with in-game LiveOps. So let's talk a little bit about that. So first and foremost, the best thing you actually can do is deciding to having just one team to handle both in-game and webshop live operations. It's a big one. But if for some reason, doesn't matter what, you can't do that, at least make sure that those teams won't be competing. And you wouldn't believe me how many times I've seen quite the opposite, and every single time that led to pretty severe problems. So no competition between teams. So both webshop and in-game LiveOps team, they should have shared KPIs. They should use one schedule. They should plan everything together. And actually, to make that possible, you need to find an answer for several questions. For example, how you will synchronize SKUs, promotion, and events between in-game, between the game and the web shop. How will you track where players came from to your web shop? How will you track players' behavior in the web shop and connect this data to in-game behavioral data? So there is like 1,000 more questions to find answer to, but answer at least these 3 and you should be fine. Those are the biggest ones. Even though webshop and in-game LiveOps should be pretty tightly connected, you should leverage webshop's unique LiveOps features. So I want to give you a few examples. So first, use webshop to enhance in-game events. You can add exclusive activities, something that could only be completed on the webshop for additional rewards, or offer more expensive options to progress. Second one, occasionally run web exclusive events with more valuable rewards than usual. That will reinforce the habit of using a webshop, and this is exactly what we guys want. Consider running regional specific events. And this is a very interesting thing, because with web shops, you are not limited to just credit cards. And there is a lot of regions where credit cards just not being used that often. So with web shop, you can change the situation and start monetizing players that you will never ever will be able to monetize another way. And as far as we know, and we made like 1,000 researches on this part, there is a lot of players who are willing to spend. They just can't. So this one is an interesting thing. And remember to continuously reinforce players' awareness about your web shop. So for that, you can use social and referral LiveOps mechanics, like allow players to bring in even more players by giving them ability to gift things and, for example, share coupons that their friends can exchange for some valuable rewards. That will basically, for zero marketing costs, will bring you more players to your web shop. And so this one is the last, but probably the most important rule, because it's basically not just the rule, it's a mindset. So treat your web shop like a part of your game. You might have noticed that I basically mentioned the idea that a web shop is a part of your game several times during my speech, and of course that is not a coincidence, for a very good reason. You can't afford thinking about web shop as just a landing page somewhere in the internet. This kind of thinking is not just mistaken, it's incredibly dangerous. Why? Remember, to form a habit, an action should be easy. And when a user player sees something he or she never seen before, they basically face learning curve. So they have to invest their time, their effort to understand how this new thing works. And if they will succeed or not solely depends on their motivation. And believe me, no one have enough motivation to deal with the necessary difficulty. So that leads us to yet another one crucial tenet. Try to make the learning curve as flat as possible. How you can do that? So, to do that, you need to minimize the amount of effort players need to invest to actually understand how your web shop works. So try your best to mirror UI of the game. Basically, it should be a copy of your in-game store. And same logic applies to the UX. The purchase flow logic should be exactly the same as in-game. So use, for example, the same sections order so that as soon as player enters your web shop, he will immediately recognize the pattern and will start navigate without any difficulties. So try not to do something like this. That probably won't work. So the learning curve won't be looking good. In this case, player will have to understand what's going on, where I need to go. Some of them will just churn. Instead of this, try to do something like this. Just replicate. Okay, so UI and UX is not the only parts of your web shop that needs to be a part of your game. So we already talked about how web shop, LiveOps of the web shop should be tied with its in-game twin, events, seasons, sales, and basically any other activity should be somehow mirrored on your web shop. Next, you need to implement joint marketing strategy. So almost all communications that you do should reinforce the fact of coexistence and deepen connection between the web shop and the game. So we do have large partners, all of you know these games, all of you play these games, and they basically mention web shop in 100% of their marketing communications right now. They try to move as many players to the store as possible. You need to continuously remind players about the web shop. Other than that, it just don't work that good. And the last thing, but strategically probably the most important one, you need to integrate web shop's goals into short-term and long-term business strategy. So you want to have very clear KPIs that will foster collaboration between teams and management and won't lead to internal competition by any cost. It's way too dangerous. So if you will follow these simple rules, your web shop will shine not only as a product, but as a new revenue channel. So a quick summary. First, never stop communicating about your web shop. Second, friction is your biggest enemy. Third, value is the king of the web shop. Fourth, use LiveOps power. And the last one, treat your web shop as a part of your game. I will. You can make a photo. All right. Thank you, guys.